Terrell Edmunds is off. And while many believe there was a real possibility that we would get here, the Pittsburgh Steelers now have a decision to make. They have to figure out how they're going to replace a guy that has virtually started every game for them since stepping into the NFL. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackbine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers To Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/allsteelerstalk and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. And today, we're talking about how the Pittsburgh Steelers changed their draft plans to replace Terrell Edmunds. Because yes, there are options in free agency. I believe there are valuable options in free agency still. Guys like John Johnson III, or possibly a Jonathan Owens out of Houston who broke out last season as an undrafted free agent. There are names. But realistically, the Pittsburgh Steelers had their eyes on the NFL draft. And while they waited to see the future of Terrell Edmunds, they also scouted guys that they believe can fit the system. And they needed to see where Edmunds ended up before they made their decision of how strongly they will consider a defensive back or a safety in the NFL draft. Well, Edmonds is gone. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, you have to believe that they are now tossing safety and a dominant, versatile player pretty high on their draft board. The Steelers have to replace 79 games and 75 starts since 2018. 5 interceptions, 410 tackles, 26 pass deflections, 15 tackles for loss. That is what Terrell Edmunds has done during his time in Pittsburgh. It's not the flashiest stat card. It's not the most electrifying play on the field. Edmunds was never a guy that was making SportsCenter top 10 or being talked about by the masses on national media. But what he did is exactly what Mike Tomlin asks of players. Your best ability is availability. And Terrell Edmunds not only was available virtually all the time, but he grew every single season and got better every single season. And you could only expect that that's going to continue in 2023 and beyond. And I'm excited for the future of Terrell Edmunds. I think he's a good player in the NFL. I believe that he has success ahead of him wherever he ends up. Before the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are not just replacing a guy who's good in the box or can play next to Minkah Fitzpatrick or who Minkah Fitzpatrick really, really trusted. They're replacing a guy who was always available, who was always able to step in. They did not have to worry about needing strong safety depth because Terrell Edmunds was there. You didn't have to say, oh, well, what if? There was never a what if. Terrell Edmunds was available all the time. So for the first time in 6 years, the Pittsburgh Steelers will need to look at their strong safety position and go, we have a real what if situation. Damontae Kazee will be a reliable starter, obviously, but Damontae Kazee is not as indestructible as Terrell Edmunds was. And life gets very different when you're planning for the unexpected in the NFL. So the Steelers, they need 2 check marks off the to-do list in their scouting of a backup safety. They need a guy who could play pretty much anywhere. In the box, a little bit of nickelback, strong safety, center field if you need him to. Needs to be able to be a third safety. Needs to be able to provide to their 3 safety set. And second, he needs to be a guy who could come in here and provide availability. You could go a couple of options. And I think that the Steelers could have had some irony in this. As Terrell Edmunds said, hey, I am leaving. It's been a great 5 years. I appreciate everything you did for me. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the second contract. Our time was memorable. Thank you. But I'm signing elsewhere. Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan, in the meantime, are sitting around watching Alabama's pro day, And who's in front of them? First round pick Brian Branch, who made it clear at the NFL Combine that his dream is to play with Minkah Fitzpatrick for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is a guy who could play anywhere on the football field. The only position that he didn't play at Alabama was center field, but that's okay because you have Minkah Fitzpatrick, and if you don't have Minkah Fitzpatrick, you have DeMonte KZ, both of whom are guys who could play center field rather easily. And can't you just see, to some degree, talking to whoever in 10 years and just saying, yeah, remember when Terrell Edmunds said that he was leaving? And that same day, Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan were at Alabama's pro day finding their next all-pro safety in Brian Branch, the next Minkah Fitzpatrick star. Can't you just see that? Because in my head, the second that Terrell Edmunds announced that he was leaving, my first thought was Mike Tomlin's watching the best safety in the draft right now. And you know he's thinking about replacing Terrell Edmunds. But that's not the only option. The Pittsburgh Steelers have others. They obviously have a guy like Antonio Johnson, who could be another first-round pick. They have Jamie Robinson, who could be another first-round pick. Both versatile guys. Both guys that the Pittsburgh Steelers have had their eyes on to some degree. And then you get interesting names like Jordan Battle out of Alabama, who the Steelers could have also been watching at the Crimson Tide Pro Day, who's more of a day 2, second, third round type safety that the Steelers could wait on. Ji'Ayir Brown out of Penn State, who the Steelers very much so enjoy, who they met with at the NFL Combine, who's a local guy, is going to get a lot of praise. The Steelers don't need to do a whole ton of digging on this guy because, well, they have their sources, and their sources are local. Another guy who could come in here, second round, maybe even get him at 49. Feel very confident about that. Or they could go the route of a late round pick in a guy like Anthony Johnson Jr. out of Iowa State, who everybody made a huge deal about just a couple of days ago because the Steelers didn't go to Jordan Addison's pro day. They went to Iowa State's pro day because obviously scouting 3 players that you feel comfortable with instead of 1 makes much more sense. And in the Steelers' eyes, it wasn't a jab at Jordan Addison or a we will not draft Jordan Addison at 17. It's a this is a business decision, and the business decision says Will McDonald, Xavier Hutchinson, and Anthony Johnson Jr. are much better to watch than just one wide receiver that we have seen plenty of tape on, who used to play literally next door during a season in which we heavily scouted his quarterback. The Pittsburgh Steelers didn't need to do any more research, any more homework on Jordan Addison. So instead, they went to Iowa State. And at the time, you could have just looked at it like they're spending some time with Anthony Johnson Jr. just because they like defensive backs. Mike Tomlin is a defensive back coach. But now you look at it and go, them talking to Anthony Johnson Jr. about playing both the nickelback and safety, it could mean something. And they could look at that guy as another Cam Sutton type figure. And those guys, well, the Pittsburgh Steelers love those guys. I think either way, it changes the draft plans. I think either way, you look at this situation and you look at Terrell Edmunds leaving. And a couple of days ago, you felt as if the Steelers could ignore safety because they could just go sign somebody. And there are still names out there. But Terrell Edmunds leaving late in free agency means that the Steelers have to have a plan. The fact that they haven't immediately signed somebody else, they have to have a plan. Just like the Cam Sutton and Patrick Peterson move, they knew they were going to lose Sutton. So what did they do? They went and got an all-pro that they believe can replace him for the time being while they develop somebody else. At safety, Edmonds was a guy who they hoped would have stayed around forever, but chances were if he did sign in Pittsburgh, he was going to sign another 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal. And then next year or 2 years from now, he was going to try and go get another contract. And eventually he would have stuck. And eventually somebody would have paid him the money that he's probably worth. But he left. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are now looking at it going, he was our plan A. Who is our plan B? I think a lot of people are going to look at names in free agency that are still available. They're going to look at a John Johnson, at an Adrian Amos, at a Kareem Jackson, at a Taylor Rapp. They're going to look at the names still available. But the Pittsburgh Steelers love their young defensive backs. And it's a little ironic, a little bit of a coincidence that they were sitting in front of the best one in the country coming into the NFL moments after Terrell Edmunds says he's no longer returning to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The day before, 2 days before, they were scouting a later round option that they believed could be a versatile piece to their defense. And then 2 days later, Terrell Edmunds says he's not coming back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they met with a lot of safeties at the NFL Combine. And you just got to think that that holds a lot more ground today than it did yesterday. So yes, the Steelers draft plans most certainly are changing because of Terrell Edmunds' departure. It's just a matter of where they're going to go. And I think all three options, all three levels, that first top guy, that second, third round guy, and that late day 3 option are all very, very exciting and hold plenty of upside in a draft that is very deep at the safety position. In perfect time for the Pittsburgh Steelers to need a new safety.